Now that the introductory press conference is in the books, it is time to get to work. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for January 25th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making this show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, you're checking us out on YouTube. Thank you. We appreciate that. We appreciate my man, Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And, of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. Now that the introductory press conference is done for Tom Telesco, the GM, and Antonio Pierce, the head coach, got a lot of feedback coming up in segment number 3, so we'll make sure that we do that. Segment number 2, a couple folks that were guests on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, Raider Nation Radio 920 from the national side of things. We'll give you a little bit more background on GM Tom Telesco, talk a little bit more about the hiring of Antonio Pierce, plus we'll take you inside the committee room. One of the guys that was part of the committee that helped with the hiring process when it comes to Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. And, oh, by the way, he's a Hall of Famer. You'll hear from him coming up in segment number 2 as well. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. And again, now the introductory press conference is in the books. It's all said and done. My initial takeaways from it were that Telesco and Antonio Pierce are on the same page. Not only did Antonio Pierce get a chance to sit down with Telesco before he was officially hired, when he came in for that second interview on Monday, they kind of got to talk philosophies and get on the same page. And both guys indicated that it was a good match. There was some good synergy right there. Of course, energy is something that AP brings. Tom Telesco kind of has that cool, laid back, that experienced type, like kind of been there, done that. I think that's a really good balance between the two guys. Obviously, AP is a first-time head coach, and Tom Telesco, he's been a GM for 11 years, but in the league, 29 years. He's very adamant about building through the draft, but he also said free agency, trades, guys that are out on the open market, guys that are on the streets looking for jobs. Those are, stones that will not be unturned either, and we'll definitely use all of that to build rosters. So I'm looking forward to what it looks like. Antonio Pierce talked about, the offensive coordinator position, what he's looking for in the offensive coordinator. He said someone that could score more than 24 points. So he knows scoring for the Raiders was obvious an issue, right? They only scored 20 points a couple times throughout the course of the season. That's not going to win very many games. So he's looking for someone that can get 24, right? They had a nice little laugh about the 63 points that the Raiders put up on the Chargers, which ultimately ended up being Telesco's last game as the GM of the Chargers. And AP told him we were going for 71. We were going to score another touchdown, and we were going to also go for the 2-point conversion to put up 71 points. But, just seeing them have a nice kind of back and forth, and for a guy that AP had never met until he sat down in the interview room with them and talked with them, I think that they were pretty much on the same page, and I think that there was some good ideas bounced back and forth. A lot of folks like myself, have talked about Antonio Pierce and the identity of the Raiders offense. And, it's run. And AP said, yeah, I want to run the ball. I want to be physical, but I also want to stretch the field. I also want to have this Raiders team in the image of what Al Davis had, which was a guy that stretched the field, a team that stretched the field and take what they want. So they want to bring that element back. They want to have that strong arm quarterback. They want to have that guy that could be a game changer. So that's going to be interesting. Tom Telesco let it be known that he doesn't know the roster yet. He's going to deep dive into it, check it out. Then he'll be able to understand what he has on the roster currently and what he needs on the roster moving forward. So really good stuff. I could go, through the whole press conference, dissect it, break it on down, but that'll be the whole show. And I don't want to do that to you. If you want to check out the whole press conference, I do encourage you to go check it out on Raiders.com or, LVSportsNetwork.com under Raider Nation Radio 920. We ran the whole thing live during JT the Brick Show. So if you want to do that, you could do that as well. We didn't get the opportunity to ask Mark Davis anything about Champ Kelly because, well, Mark Davis introduced him, and then he went and just kind of stood to the side. He wasn't up on the stage with Telesco and with Antonio Pierce, so we didn't get to ask about Champ Kelly, but he did talk to Paul Gutierrez on the phone following the press conference and asked about Champ Kelly. He said he remains with the organization as assistant GM, hopes Kelly stays. And he said, I think he brings a lot to the organization. I have a lot of respect for him and what he was able to do. So the ball's in Champ Kelly's court, which is what we believed. I know he has 1 year left on his deal. There's not really any GM jobs open for him right now. He interviewed with the Panthers, but that job has been filled, and obviously the Raiders job has been filled. So it might make sense, even though I've talked about I wouldn't want to be that guy to hang around after I didn't get the job. It might make sense for him to hang around, be under Tom Telesco for a year and get a little bit more experience, learn a little bit more, and then possibly get a GM job the next time around. But speaking of Tom Delaney, Raiders owner Mark Davis went on to say that the GM has final say on the 53-man roster, but they work together, talking about Telesco and Pierce, and also said Tom Delaney remains in charge of the salary cap, which is great news. He has done a great job with the Raiders salary cap, the way he writes contracts. That's fantastic. And if you look at the Chargers and you see where they are right now as far as their salary cap goes, $40 to $60 million in the red, that's not good. And oh, by the way, don't know if you were under a rock and you didn't see, they have a new head coach. His name is Jim Harbaugh. So, man, the AFC West is going to be fun, isn't it? I'm excited about it, and obviously it's a long time before training camp even gets here. I mean, hell, this season's not even over yet. But, man, you got Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, and Antonio Pierce. Let's go. Sign me up, man. Sign me up for that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. That gets me excited and fired up. I think the division is going to be another one of those just tough, hard-nosed divisions where you're probably going to see a lot of teams split with each other. And you know what? I'm okay with that. So that was all from Mark Davis on Champ Kelly and also on, who has the final say as far as the GM and the head coach goes. I know that everyone wants to know about offensive coordinators and where the Raiders are leaning. Albert Breer put out that the Raiders are scheduling an interview with USC assistant Cliff Kingsbury for later in the week. Kingsbury interviewed for the Bears and Eagles offensive coordinator jobs already. I'm intrigued by Kingsbury. I like that name. I wouldn't mind if, he gets in the building, Antonio Pierce, woos him, wows him, whatever the case may be, and he sticks around and decides to take the job as the offensive coordinator. I think he would do some good things in that position and kind of let you know what kind of offense Antonio Pierce is looking to run. Also, the Raiders will interview Steelers quarterback coach Mike Sullivan for their offensive coordinator job. Sullivan called plays this season after Matt Canada was fired and was assistant on Tom Coughlin's Giants staff while Antonio Pierce captained the defense. And that doesn't really do anything for me. The Steelers offense stunk. And I know that was Matt Canada's offense, and he could only work with what he could work with, but that offense stunk. And so I don't really want them to go in that direction. I know they have the Tom Coughlin ties, and so they're, of course, going to bring those kind of guys in, and that's fine. I think that I much rather lean towards Kingsbury than Sullivan, but we'll see what happens. But those are a couple more names to add to the interviews for the offensive coordinator position. The Raiders did make a few coaching hires, but on the defensive side of things on Wednesday, they hired Gerald Alexander as their safeties coach. He spent the last 2 seasons as a Steelers assistant defensive back coach. He also ran the Dolphins DB room for 2020 and 2021, where he became a favorite for many new players, or he became a favorite for many players, and now he aims to do it again in Vegas. That was from Cameron Wolf from NFL Network. Alexander's 39. He's a rising defensive star on the coaching ranks. Started his career at Cal from 2017 to 19, coaching their DBs, seeing DBs Ashton Davis, Jalen Hawkins, Cam Bynum, and Daniel Scott, all selected in the draft in the top 150, and then of course made his way to Miami from 2020 to 2021. Their passing defense ranked 6th and 12th. Xavier Howard earned 2 Pro Bowl honors and first team All-Pro, while rookie Javon Holland posted 2 interceptions. And that wasn't all. The Raiders went on to hire a DB coach in Ricky Manning. That name sounds familiar. Yes, Fresno's own Ricky Manning, Edison High School's own Ricky Manning. He's the new defensive back coach for the Raiders. He's been with the Jets since 2017, overseeing the development of some of the league's best defensive backs. And they've got some solid corners there in New York with the Jets. And so another guy who was a former player added to the mix, a guy that's tough, I remember watching him play at Edison High School. So I know how tough Ricky Manning Jr. is. And so it's kind of cool to see another player added to the mix. And I start looking at some of these rosters, these coaching staffs around the league, and I start to see all these former players on there and realize that, that is really the way that a lot of these staffs are going. And you're starting to see a lot of them get a lot out of all their players. Like you saw Tampa Bay have all the former players on their roster and their coaching staff, and then they went and won the Super Bowl. You see all the success that they're having in Detroit. And, of course, they've done this in New Orleans with their defense. They've brought in a bunch of players. You see what DeMeco Ryans is doing in Houston. So I'm all for it. I'm with it. I have no problem at all. And one more little nugget here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. Senior Bowl coach Rob Leonard, the Raiders defensive line coach, he's going to be in charge of edge rushers and linebackers for the Senior Bowl. So I think it's good to have a coach there that get to work with those guys for the whole week of practice and obviously coach them up in the game. But that week of practice is when you get to know players, get the hands-on one-on-one time with them, and also just be able to see their work habits, their work ethic, what kind of player they are, what do they want to get from that experience. I think it's good to have coaches that are on the actual staff at the Senior Bowl. And we saw Patrick Graham be one of the coaches a year ago. Rob Leonard's going to be a coach this upcoming year. But let's take a little bit deeper dive into Tom Telesco. Let's take a little deeper dive into Antonio Pierce. And also let's hear from one of the guys that was in the room that helped. They were part of the committee that helped with the landing of both Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about eBay Motors. With passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and a whole lot more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, you're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. And oh, by the way, just to update you, my man Jason hit me up on Wednesday. I was like, yeah, Q, I'm getting the win. Book it. Lock it in. Do what you do. I got you. All right, then. I see you, Jason. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to take you behind the scenes, let you get to know a little bit more about the new GM, Tom Telesco, hear a little bit more about the hiring of AP and Telesco, and, of course, take you inside the committee room, let you hear from someone that was part of the process in the hiring of both of them. So we'll start out with my guy, Ian Fitzsimmons from Amber and Ian on ESPN Radio. His show comes on right before mine, which is Game Night on ESPN Radio. And on Tuesday, when it was announced that Tom Telesco was going to be the next GM of the Silver and Black, he was a little bummed. He was excited. He said, hey, man, Tommy T is awesome. But he was also a little bummed because he wanted him to be a part of his show, wanted to have him as a weekly analyst for the championship week and, of course, the Super Bowl as well for his radio show. And I get that, right? If you can have a guy that's been in the trenches when it comes to, just building rosters and, he just wanted to have that extra voice on there. And then even leading up to, like, the draft, he wanted him to be a part of his show. Well, obviously, now that he's the Raiders GM, he can't do that. He's got other fish to fry, which is trying to help put this roster together for the Silver and Black. So as he was talking to me about Telesco, I thought, hey, man, you should just come on the show and talk about the GM so Raider Nation can get a really good idea about him. And so we talked for about 15 or 16 minutes. It's on lvsportsnetwork.com under Unnecessary Roughness. The whole interview is right there. I'm not going to play the whole interview for you, but I'll just play the first couple minutes from Ian Fitzsimmons when he really just kind of breaks down, who Tom Telesco is. And really, I started off by telling him that, half of Raider Nation's a little bit on edge because the last thing they remember is what they saw, and that was a losing Chargers team that gave up 63 points at Allegiant Stadium. So here's Ian Fitzsimmons just kind of giving you a little bit of a preview and a little bit of details behind the scenes of who GM Tom Telesco really is.
First, Q, I understand how, you lose a little scar tissue there, right? Because the most recent thing that you saw was that chicken kicking right there, at Allegiant Field. So I can understand why there's a faction of the fan base that is somewhat, shall we say, tempered when it comes to the hiring of Telesco to run your football organization. But I can tell you this right now. He is, in my opinion, the best evaluator of talent that there is. His problem was he hired the wrong head coaches, and if you'd gotten rid of Staley earlier, like a lot of people thought they might, because, when you're going forward on, 4th and 1 on your own 18 with a playoff berth on the line, against the Raiders. Remember that, right? A few years ago.
Yep.
That's a telltale sign. Like, man, you're being stubborn to that stupid chart in your hand where the analytics are telling you to go for it. And Staley never measured. There is no metric for momentum in a game. I mean, that can't be calculated. That's a feel, and he really couldn't feel it. So Telesco's, there was one thing, and he'd probably tell you this, is his choice of head coach. But when it comes to talent on the field, look at the dudes he's drafted, man. I mean, Slater at left tackle, Bosa, Derwin James. I mean, Justin Herbert, remember, was an introvert coming out of Oregon, and a lot of people they want that fiery quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that ain't Herbert's personality. Well, what does Telesco do? I don't give a damn. Look, watch the guy play. And here he is, one of the best talents in the league. And remember, he's a Bill Polian disciple. He studied and tutored under Polian for years in Indianapolis. And that's where he really found his eye for the game. And he still leans on Bill. So when you have a guy who is in Canton as your mentor, and that's who you learn from, and you really stick to your guns when it comes to evaluating talent and staying true to your board and not reaching for a player because of need. And that's here's a story Telesco told me about Polian, and I don't want to take too much of your time here, Q. If I'm going on too long, let me know.
No, you're good.
But Reggie Wayne is on the board, right? And he's the number one player they've got. But they have this other dude in Indy named Marvin Harrison. Was there truly a need for another number one type receiver? And a lot of the scouts in the room go, man, we really need tackle. We got to protect Manning. We need tackle. And finally, Polian stands up and goes, who's the top-rated player on the damn board? Everyone goes, Reggie Wayne. Well, why don't we put the board together for 2 years? If we're not going to stay true to it. We're damn drafting Reggie Wayne.
Right.
And the rest is history, right? I mean, then they go on to win a Super Bowl and going toe-to-toe with Tom Brady for years and years. Those are some of the things that Telesco has in his football DNA. So when it comes to eval and drafting and getting talent, he's as good as any GM out there. And you already have the head coach in place. Get ready to rock and roll, Vegas. You got a hell of a GM.
So there you go. Ian Fitzsimmons, again, he's very good at what he does, and he knows Tom Telesco really well, and all he could continue to say is, Q, the Raiders got a really good one, right? You guys are going to be really happy with what you see when he puts the roster together, and his biggest hang-up was hiring coaches. Already got the coach in place, and Antonio Pierce. Don't have to worry about that. All you got to do is let him go out there, get the talent, bring it in there, and let the coaching staff coach it up. So I thought that was really cool. That was Ian Fitzsimmons from ESPN Radio as part of my radio show Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio on Wednesday. Then Rhett Lewis from NFL Network, he was a guest as well. And, he joined the show to talk about the AFC and NFC championship games. But, of course, I know he's got the finger on the pulse of what's going on across the league. He also does, draft podcasts for the Raiders, him and Bucky Brooks. So I asked him about Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco right after the introductory press conferences were done, and just asked him his thoughts on the official hires. We just had the introductory press conference with Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce for the Raiders. What did you think about the hire? There's been a lot of conversations out there, a lot of different names floated out there, but it's official. Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. What did you think about those guys?
Well, look, Raider. I can't do it like AP can, but I'm just there was no doubt. Seeing the way that this team rallied around AP, seeing the way that he commanded the respect and led this Raiders team down the stretch, once Mark Davis made the move to change leadership, it was clear that this was the dude that was meant to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So that part I knew for sure. I didn't know where they were going to go on the GM front. Could Champ have stayed on? Certainly. And become the full-time GM. I think Champ's a rising star in this business. But Tom, what I'll tell you and what Raider fans can certainly attest to is this guy knows how to build a roster. And this guy knows how to build a roster up front on both sides of the ball. Joey Bosa, Chenna Nwosu, Tuli Tuipulotu this last year on the defensive side. Offensive side, Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson along the O-line, using first-round picks at marquee positions with big-time foundational building blocks for your franchise. That's what Raider Nation can continue to build now, and I feel like especially along the offensive line, as you look to a very offensive tackle-heavy draft coming up, maybe one we could slide over there on the right side. of this Raiders offensive line. I think Tom Telesco is going to be a really terrific addition in terms of the personnel.
How important do you think it was, since Tom Telesco has so much experience, 29 years in the league, to match him up with Antonio Pierce, who this is getting his first time to be a full-time head coach?
Yeah, my buddy Daniel Jeremiah, who does the color on the Chargers radio broadcast, and of course is our lead draft analyst at NFL Network, we're kind of talking about that very thing. Like this definitely made sense. You've got a rookie head coach. Hadn't been a head coach at the college or the professional level before. And now, you can pair him up with a savvy veteran personnel man who has been around the block and has seen what good teams look like and how to build a roster that way, and then how to take input, from a coach who's going to go out there and make his coordinator hires and understand what they need from each other. I think is really, because look, you look at the best, teams in the league, and you have head coach and GM in lockstep. Think about the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Think about the Buffalo Bills with Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, Andy Reid and Brett Veach in Kansas City. Like, you go on, and the best programs, the best franchises have that tandem that are working hand in hand really well together. And I feel like that's something that Telesco and AP can find.
So I thought that's some more really good stuff from Rhett Lewis. And I love how he breaks down, talking about the trenches, and that Tom Telesco is going to attack the trenches, and the fact that, the youth and inexperience of Antonio Pierce will be balanced out by the experience. 29 years in the league, 11 years as a GM for the Chargers, but also the time spent with the Colts, and just having a mentor like Bill Polian, something that Ian Fitzsimmons was talking about as well. I think that that's very relevant, and I'm hoping that that's really going to pay off quickly for the Silver and Black. Finally, here in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, I want you to hear from Richard Seymour, the Hall of Famer, right? I mean, I ran into him. He was at the press conference for both Telesco and Antonio Pierce, and we thought we were going to get a little bit of time to, have little media scrums with Pierce and Telesco, and it just wasn't meant to be. But Richard Seymour was standing there, so I just walked up to him. I was like, "Hey, man, can I get a couple minutes with you?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's cool. I want to make it about these guys. I don't want to make it about me. But yeah, I got a couple minutes for you." So that was really cool. So you hear that in just a second. But he tweeted out later in the afternoon on Wednesday, 6 decades ago, Mr. Davis set the standard. The Raiders organization would be the finest in all sports. In our new head coach, Antonio Pierce, and new general manager, Tom Telesco, we have found exactly this: the finest leadership and the right leadership to build on our tradition of excellence. I'm proud of them both and our collective efforts to bring them home to Las Vegas. I'm prouder still of the values they represent and the Raider culture we are building together. That's Richard Seymour, who did a lot of his work, most of his work, all his glory. What got him into the Hall of Fame was his time with the Patriots. But you could tell he loves being a Raider and being, part of once a Raider, always a Raider, being embraced as an alumni, being part of the team and having the respect that he does in the building and around the building. And if you didn't pick that up from the tweet that he put out that I just read, how about the conversation I had with them following the introductory press conference, something I did just off to the side. Here it is right here, myself and Richard Seymour. Here, Richard Seymour and Tom Telesco was just introduced, and Antonio Pierce was just introduced. You were part of the process. What do you think now? Now it's all said and done.
Well, just as you stated, it's a process. And, we went through the process, and I feel like we have the best 2 candidates that's right for the Raiders. And, obviously, I'm humbled and honored to be a part of the process, but ultimately it was, Mark's decision.
Right.
And so, but again, like I said, it wasn't just me. It was, we had a panel, and, we just wanted to make sure that, we asked, the right questions to, elicit, my whole thing is I played for Al Davis.
Right.
So I know what it means to be a Raider. I understand the rich tradition. And, I think AP exudes that. And, you look at Tom's resume, I mean, he's just phenomenal. So I feel like the best is yet to come. And, this is day 1.
You were in the locker room following that last game of the season when you were in there, Seawood was in there, Mike Haynes was in there, that celebration after the Broncos game. What did that mean to you, and just looking around the locker room, seeing the guys, how they felt about it?
Well, I think at the end of the day, when you think about the Raiders, you think about the rich history, the tradition, the alumni. And, I think even when you think about Al Davis, it was always a nostalgia for the former players. And so, it's encouraged here to come back and be a part of the Raider Nation. And so, like I said, I'm just honored to, be able to, lend my football knowledge to the team. And, we'll just see where we go from there.
How much did you see those players in that locker room, they'll reach out to you and just try to pick your brain a bit? Look, like you said, get your football knowledge.
No, certainly. I mean, I will say this. So after I gave my Hall of Fame speech, Max Crosby reached out and said, he was just moved by it and, inspired. And so, we've, had a close relationship since that point. But, for me, I'm an open book. I just want to be able to share. And that's what the Raiders have always historically been about. Yeah. Diversity, sharing, knowledge, and doing things the right way. Yeah. And doing it with passion. And so, this is a step in the right direction to continue to build upon this rich history.
I'll tell you what, I thought it was pretty cool that you're in the locker room. There's players that currently play for the team are like, hey, can you take a picture? Can you make sure you take a picture of me and my guy? Like, that's got to be pretty special.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And, like I said, I mean, I got a lot of respect for those guys. And, I'm always honored to watch them play. I mean, because it's a tough, physical, demanding game. And, for those guys to lay it out on the line, I have a ton of respect for it.
How good was that? I mean, if anyone had any questions about Richard Seymour, why is he in that room? I don't understand. He's a Patriot. Man, I'll tell you right now, he obviously can never deny being a Patriot. You can never deny all the work he did with the Patriots, all the greatness he had with the Patriots. But that dude is a Raider through and through. I love it. I really do. And I love the fact that even though most of his work was with the Patriots, for him to know that he's got a home with the Raiders and he's embracing that home and wants to be such a part of it and is around and visible all the time. And like he said, hey, man, I'm a book of knowledge. Max Crosby, after my Hall of Fame speech, started picking my brain saying I was inspiring. Look, if Max Crosby signs off on Richard Seymour as Raider through and through, who are we to say he's not, right? I think that's awesome. So that was a real honor to be able to get a couple minutes with Richard Seymour, the Hall of Famer. Coming up at segment number 3, what's on your mind? 707-654-4693. It's your calls and texts are coming up as we close out the show here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we do that, though, I do want to tell you about FanDuel. Regular season, it's done. Super Wildcard Weekend, yep, it's in the books. Divisional round, yeah, that too. It's coming up to the AFC and NFC championship games, right? This upcoming weekend for the right to go to the Super Bowl. It is still a really good time to join FanDuel. Get in on the action with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, just like that. The app is easy to use. There's so many ways to bet, like same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. If parlays are your thing, you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find popular parlays and a whole lot more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start out with a call from Drew in Sacktown. He's calling after watching the introductory press conference and has a quarterback scenario question that he'd like to throw out there that may rattle a few feathers amongst Raider Nation. Here he is, Drew in Sacktown.
Hey, Q. This is Drew out of Sacktown. I just finished watching the press conference for the opening of Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. It was great to see them and how excited they were. And I got to see you ask your question. It's so great to see you in Vegas and doing your thing. And, you are the voice of Raider Nation. You really are. It's great to see your journey to get there. And also your pod on Kimani was great. And my condolences to you. And I hope that you don't ever lose that love for him, that thought of him. Moving on to football, I tried to find ways to make Raider Nation upset sometimes with my friends by bringing up ridiculous scenarios. And so here's a scenario for you. We want Raiders in the building. That's what Antonio Pierce has said. He wants Max Crosby's. He wants Josh Jacobs. He wants people who want to be a Raider, want to emulate the Raider way. what if the quarterback situation is bringing back Derek Carr? I mean, I can't assume that the Saints are happy with his performance, and there's got to be some kind of way that we can finagle. I don't know. I guess it would have to be a trade. I don't think they're going to cut him. But do they bring back Derek? Would that make Devontae Adams happy? Would that satiate the fan base? I mean, it would be the most controversial move in Raider Nation history, maybe other than trading Khalil Mack. But what if we ran it back with Carr? Is that insane? Is that so crazy? Derek Carr would finally get the defense that he, quote-unquote, always needed, and we'd be able to score 24 points a game, as AP said, hopefully, with the new coordinator. I don't know. Let me know. Hope to hear the 30 pod. Thanks.
Drew, thanks for the call. I appreciate you. Thanks for the kind words as well. They definitely appreciate you. And I kind of laugh because, man, as far as DC goes, that ship has sailed, right? I'll never say never. Sports are weird. Some things happen out of, sometimes out of desperation or just out of pure coincidence. It's just, like I said, in sports, you can never say never. But I don't think that DC and the Raiders, reuniting is happening anytime soon. And I don't think it should. My opinion, the Raiders should be looking for their next, not looking at their ex, right? He might return one day, sign a 1-year deal. Maybe something crazy happens and somehow they find a way to bring him back. I don't know. But I don't think that that's the direction that they're going. They need to look for the next big thing, their next innovative guy, the next game-changing quarterback, not a guy that they're like, yeah, we're familiar with him, so we're going to bring him back. There's a reason why your ex is your ex, and sometimes you just need to leave it just like that. So thanks, Drew, for the call, though. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Joby1 Kenobi in Arlington, Texas. Nailed the head coach, missed on the GM hire. We'll see what happens with the OC. Champ will leave for sure, and so will Graham. Our defense will struggle next year, especially if we can't draft, which we have not had a good draft in a long time. Just my opinion. I feel sorry for AP. Looks like he's being set up to fail. The new GM is a bump truck. I think AP will be the fall guy next year when we have a bad season. This sucks. I'm praying that I'm wrong. Graham will have to stay if we want a chance. But with the GM hire, why would he stay? That's Joby1 Kenobi in Arlington, Texas. And clearly he's not happy with the GM hire. And I'll say this, Joby. Thank you for the text, first of all. AP is great. I'm excited about that hire. I'm excited about his opportunity. He's excited about his opportunity. Patrick Graham's not going anywhere. He's staying unless he has an opportunity to be a head coach. And would you blame him? Right? I mean, if he has an opportunity to be a head coach, you take that job any day of the week or twice on Sunday. Outside of that, he's not going anywhere. He was at the introductory press conference. Matter of fact, AP shouted him out right away. Hey, man, it's good to see you here, right? Just because he knows that he has an opportunity to possibly leave as a head coach, so he wants him there as well. I think Telesco will be fine. I really do. You're talking about bad drafts. Well, at least Telesco has had plenty of great players that he's drafted, plenty of Pro Bowlers, right? Plenty of dudes that he's drafted. So at least he's got that going for him. He's got the experience. So he's not like so fired up for the opportunity as a young buck, right? And we all have had those situations where we've done things. I know I have. I've done something. I've been so excited about it that I haven't even done it good, right? Because I'm just so excited. Sometimes it's almost like hyperventilating. Well, he's calm, cool, and collective because he's been there, done that. So I don't think he's a bump truck. I don't think that AP is being set up for fail. I don't think it sucks. I think it's going to be okay. Is it going to be competitive next season? Absolutely. Right? You got Harbaugh in LA with the Chargers, of course, Reed with the Chiefs. You got Sean Payton with the Denver Broncos, and of course AP with the Raiders. But I mean, okay, you go out there. You got a roster. You've already got a really good roster. You build it up a little bit more. In my opinion, you go out and get a better quarterback, take it to the next level, and you're good, right? And you let the chips fall where they may. But I think you got a lot of doom and gloom. I guess I understand because a lot of hires that the Raiders have made sometimes they look good on paper and they don't turn out that well. I think he's going to be all right, man. I encourage you to go back and listen to the whole introductory press conference and kind of hear what Telesco has to say, and maybe you'll get a little bit better idea. Or maybe hearing Ian Fitzsimmons in segment number 2, maybe hearing Rhett Lewis from NFL Network in segment number 2, maybe that helps a little bit as well. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Mark in Toronto. He's calling to ask a couple questions about the Raiders front office and the upcoming draft. Here he is, Mark in Toronto.
Hey, Q, Mark from Toronto. Wanted to check in with you on the recent news and the upcoming draft. Recent news being Tom Telesco So curious if you believe the team is still going to look for a executive vice president of football operations or director of football operations to work with Tom Telesco. I guess that's my first question for you. And then second, Jaden Daniels, agree with you that we need to find a way to get into that top 3 to even have a chance to get a high caliber quarterback. And I'm wondering, just out of the things you've heard within the organization and how closely you followed the NFL, what type of package would we need to put together to be able to land a top 3 pick? Everything I'm hearing from the Adam Schefters of the world and NFL Network is, it's a richer deal that the Bears received last year. So from your perspective, what type of package would the Raiders need to put together in order to land a top 3 pick? Love your show, man. Big fan here in Canada, and thank you for everything you do. Go Raiders.
Thank you so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And I don't have the head of football operations question answer. I don't. I thought MD was going to be a part of the press conference. He wasn't, so we didn't get that answer. I don't know if they plan on still making that hire. I really don't. I would think that if they were going to, they would probably have done it and introduced all 3 at the same time. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's something that they're working on, and they didn't think that that person needed to be heard from. Right? Maybe not seen or heard. I'm not too sure, but unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I'll continue to look and dig and listen, but unfortunately, I just don't have that answer. But thanks so much for the call. Do appreciate you. And let's go. We'll close it out with one more. A text from Johnny V. He said, "What's up, Q? It's Johnny from Eastside Long Beach. First time reaching out, long time listener. First and foremost, I want to say God bless you and your family. Watching you tell the story about the loss of your son really hit me hard. The strength you show while talking about it, as well as the story you told, is admirable. Hopefully next year we can have Kimani game. R.I.P. Kimani, and my deepest condolences to you and yours. Now, on to the latest hire, GM Tom Telesco. I was upset at first, but after doing some research, he has consistently put awesome squads together and drafted well. That being said, it appears the main concerns regarding him are the contracts and the salary cap issues he left the Chargers in. However, he won't be handling the contracts here, as those duties belong to our Senior Vice President, Director of Football Administration, Tom Delaney. His duties are solely negotiating player contracts and managing the salary cap. He also maintains the team compliance with the NFL and Management Council regulations. He's been with the Raiders for 24 years and has maintained his current role for the last 5 years. I doubt he'll be going anywhere, so that really puts my mind at ease. I'd love to hear your opinion on all this. Thanks, Q. One love. That's from Johnny V. And yeah, Tom Delaney being with the team and staying with the team and doing the contracts and the salary cap and all that good stuff, fantastic news. Because you don't want to be in the salary cap position that the Chargers are. $40 to $60 million in the red, that's going to be bad. They're going to have a purge. It's going to be like a bloodbath. They're going to have to get rid of a lot of players, a lot of talent. A lot of people are speculating that, maybe Khalil Mack will return to the Raiders. He might, because they got to shed a lot of salary, right? Joey Bosa could be out there on the open market. There's others that could be out there on the open market because of those salary. And on top of that, I know I didn't play the whole interview with Ian Fitzsimmons, but again, a guy that knows Tom Telesco really well. Telesco didn't really put the Chargers in that situation. The guys that were really in charge of the salary cap and the contracts for the Chargers, their last name was the same as the owners. And that's what he told me on my radio show when he was part of it. Ian said, I got 2 words for you: Spanos family. Next question. So that I'll just leave it at that. So Telesco is not really that guy. Delaney will be that guy for the Raiders. I'm excited about the possibility of having consistently good drafts, especially early on, being able to hit on those real home runs that will help be game changers for the Raiders. That's what they need. They've consistently missed out on first rounders, and I know it's more to the draft than just the first round, but man, the Raiders need to start hitting on those ones. And if he can help do that as well and start bringing some top tier talent in, I think that's a great thing for the Silver and Black. Thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. That's all I got time for on today's show. We'll get to a call from Big E. We got some more texts on the way as we get ready to close out the week tomorrow. We'll have more news and notes of the day. And, of course, we'll have more conversations here as well. Maybe the Raiders will have an offensive coordinator by then. Maybe there'll be another guy coming in for an interview. There's always something going on, right? And we stay busy here, which is a good thing on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.